Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. General Secretary, dear speakers, dear public. First of all, I would like to thank the ICT African Foundation for inviting me to participate in this webinar about post-COVID-19 economic recovery roadmap for Africa's micro, small, middle enterprises. It's a year now that we started a cooperation between our association and your foundation with the important visit Ms. Lubna Smida did to us in Essaouira last June. We are sure that the exchange we had during this year and the new circumstances in the world will allow us to accelerate our cooperation and collective projects together with the different foundation sections in all the regions in Africa. My intervention in this webinar is under the title The Rise of the Importance of ICT and Civil Society During and After COVID-19 and the Necessity of Bigger Cooperation. The COVID-19 pandemic is here. All the human, economic, and social casualties are here. Is it bad? Yes, and very bad indeed. Will things get worse? I don't think so. Many great figures in the fields of thought, sociology, history, economy, politics, etc., argue that this may be and should be a good opportunity for the world, for all the countries, the rich and the less rich, the democratic and the less democratic, to opt for an alternative, more human, ecological, social system in economy and politics, a real new and just word, system or order. The theme of this webinar is related to post-COVID-19 economic recovery roadmap for Africa's micro, small, middle enterprises, MSME. This theme is very important because these optimist and idealist, highly qualified personalities thinking of a new world, indeed, they structured the solution for a permanent recovery of the world system on two levels that are related to the African continent and to the world of the micro, small, middle enterprises. The first level is related to the implementation of justice between the world regions and countries concerning the world resources and wealth. Since most of the African countries have been among the first nations and societies damaged by the existing world economic system, the proposed and hopefully coming system cannot be but in favor for Africa and all the less developed areas in the world and their people. The second level, related to MSME, is that this alternative first system, expected and advocated by those eminent figures, turns around the strengthening of micro, small, middle enterprises all over the world and increasing their contribution to the world economy and thus rationalizing the role of the giant multinational firms. The question is, do we have the tools to achieve that magnificent goal of establishing a better universal system? The answer is yes. And the two tools are the information and communication technology, ICT, digitization on one hand, and the civil society on the other hand. Two tools that have started to rise worldwide, surprisingly at the same time, and precisely since the early 90s of the 20th century, and have ever since kept growing to become of the most importance and efficiency nowadays. As an associative and cultural local activist in a small town in Morocco, I have been really lucky and very pleased to have witnessed this rise of these tool fields and be with many, many others throughout the world, be part of them throughout the last 30 years. Concerning the ICT, the following statistics show the extraordinary evolution of this field. In 1992, only 1 million computers were connected all over the world. 8 years later, that is in 2000, 368 million computers were connected. 14 years later, in 2014, we reached for the first time 1 billion websites. And since that date, a great growth has been going on in this field, leading us now to be aware of the fact that 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 have not haven't been haven't even been yet invented. And certainly this sudden pandemic will cause the springing out of many of these jobs related to the well-being of man and nature in fields of culture, health, education, ecological nature, etc. As for the second tool, the civil society, though existing as a concept ever since the time of Aristotle, the Athenian democracy, only the United Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro in 1992 has anchored this concept in daily life by considering civil society organisms essential partners for sustainable development. The world has to seek to save the earth, the ecology, and ever since that date, communitarian, collaborative, and associative work started to grow largely and be more efficient with the creation of unprecedented numbers of cooperatives, associations, work unions, neighborhood associations in cities and in rural areas. The civil society took even more importance thanks to the two United Nations summits that followed on sustainable development, again stressing more the necessity for civil society. The, the 2002 World Summit in Johannesburg and the 2012 United Nations Conference in Rio de Janeiro. To conclude, the social and ecological threats the whole world has suffered from more than ever in the last years are confirmed and deepened by this sudden, unprecedented pandemic of COVID 19. And this should press all of the deciding forces in our societies to seek the common solution described above about a new world and a new system. And today is the right moment for us to work on more cooperation between these two tools, the ICT and the civil society, both on a national and universal levels. They clearly proved their efficiency during the COVID 19 pandemic, and they will certainly play even a bigger role for a permanent recovery from the pandemic and after it. How we can achieve more cooperation between these two domains? I will give an example. In concrete words, the ICT African Foundation gathering us here in this uh, webinar is an organism of civil society that is concerned with spreading this technology and digitization and culture among African people. Many other African, continental, national, and local associations like ours in Morocco have more or less this objective. Other civil society organisms concerned with other themes use ICT technology and digitization on the COVID and the COVID 19 has forced more of them, as well as most sectors, to use and depend more and more on these technologies from now on. On the parallel level with technology and the political level, and on the political level, a more direct democracy has been forcing its way in the international scene. All United Nations conventions and most national constitutions, altogether with the growing demand in civil society and the social networks, urge governments to allow more involved forms of citizen participation in policy making. So now it's time to make all these organisms in these two sectors work together, which will allow a more implication of the civil society and more using of the digital tools that guarantee a good governance, transparency, and efficiency in the making of local and international policies. Thank you.